I think stuff like this is huge for us. Getting the message out from the FOP that we are an organization that represents law enforcement. We believe in the good that's being done out there, and we want to be able to share that good. But I think that the whole way that we think about how to approach what's been going on, that is going to help us build back these bridges and things that have divided us, just based on having that thought process. But I think it's just, we're going to have a dialogue.
Welcome to Friends in the Corner podcast, stories and topics from around Kentucky. I'm your host, Dan Pauly, coming to you from beautiful Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you again for checking out the show here today, and excited to be with you guys for another episode of Friends in the Corner podcast. And we got a special episode here today as we're going to be speaking with Ryan Straw. Ryan Straw is the Governmental Affairs Chair and Chaplain for the Kentucky State Fraternal Order of Police, the Kentucky State FOP. And Ryan brings us a lot of insight into what the Fraternal Order of Police actually is and how they work with law enforcement officers all across our state. He also takes some time to talk to us a little bit about kind of the strained relationship that we've had between police and citizens over last year with different things happening in our state, including the Breonna Taylor case, and how he feels we can find healing between citizens and police in a post-pandemic world. So it was definitely a great time talking with Ryan. He's a very great resource of information, had some very genuine and honest talks, and I'm very excited to have him on here to talk more. If you want to learn more after today's episode about the Kentucky State FOP, you can find them on Facebook at Kentucky State FOP. Ryan Straw is also on Facebook and Twitter at Straw FOP. And while you're taking some time to follow him, be sure to follow us as well. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FITC Podcast. That's FITC Podcast. Find us on all listening platforms. And if you have ideas for the show, email us at friendsinthecorner@gmail.com. That's friendsinthecorner, all together lowercase, at gmail.com. But you heard me talk enough here, so let's hear what Ryan has to say, and we're going to welcome our guest in right now. From the Kentucky State FOP, Ryan Straw. Going to be talking with Ryan Straw from the Kentucky FOP, and just to kind of tell my listeners a little bit about how I got connected with Ryan. So a little over a year now ago, Man, me and my wife moved out to Versailles, and we're just really trying to get connected to the community. And my wife, who's a flute player, wanted to try to get involved with a church, and we just started emailing around. And Versailles Presbyterian here in town emailed them back, and my wife went out there to play flute with them over the last year or so. And since then, we've started just coming, and we've met Ryan Straw and the pastoral staff here, and they've welcomed us in, and we're very appreciative, man, for making us nobodies from Lexington into like a part of the family here in Versailles Pres.
No, we're glad you guys are here. And, Catherine, unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. She's very well respected and loved by the congregation. So we're blessed to have you guys for sure.
Yeah, well, and I know you're a pastor here at the Versailles Presbyterian, but you're also a man of many hats.
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything, man. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's what we want to try to jump in today with you, Ryan, as we start talking about your work with the Kentucky State Fraternal Order of Police. Say that 10 times fast.
That's right.
But we got a few questions we're going to be throwing at you here today, but we're going to put the hardest one on you first, man.
Sure.
Who you are and where you're from.
Ryan Straw. I'm from Frankfort, Kentucky originally. Really lived in the Commonwealth my entire life except for a few years in Ohio.
What part of Ohio?
Cincinnati.
Okay, I'm from Dayton. So
yep.
Yeah.
Right there. So I lived across the bridge in college. Kind of a little bit of everywhere. We moved a lot growing up in Kentucky. And when I graduated from Franklin County, went to UC, graduated with a communication degree there, and then worked in law enforcement the entire time I was there. And after, and a few years ago, decided to go to seminary and just kind of get into the whole church thing. So kind of doing a little bit of both.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I'm glad it's life has drawn our circles to this point here, man, and it's been really awesome to get to know you even a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that after college you got involved in police work and stuff. So were you an officer, or did you serve as an officer after college, or?
So during college, very short story, I was going for something completely different, and was working a student job as a parking attendant, really, writing parking tickets to the bad guy.
Oh, that's fun.
And you have to call license plates in on the police radio. And there was a chief of police working at the time there at UC, and he said, "Hey, man, really should consider being a dispatcher. You have a good voice for it." And I said, "What in the heck's a dispatcher? I've never even heard of that before." And that started off my career in law enforcement. Ended up being a 911 dispatcher for a long time, and then went and worked for the federal government, Internal Revenue Service in Covington, and then ended up down in Louisville working as a probation parole officer.
Awesome. And so you've had a bit of this journey through different realms of law enforcement, which has been really awesome. Yeah. And it's eventually brought you to your current position. Well, it's brought you also to become a pastor, but it's also brought you to your current position as the Government Affairs Chair / Chaplain for the Kentucky State Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP. Yep. I sent him a letter earlier this week to Ryan to prepare for this interview, and I accidentally spelled it wrong. I said FOB, and he's like, that ain't right.
They get very particular about their name, the star and everything. They're very particular about it.
So for respect for the FOP, we're going to make sure that we say it right on the show.
No doubt.
But can you tell us a little bit about what the Fraternal Order of Police is, the Kentucky State Fraternal Order, for that matter?
So there's 336,000 members across the United States. In Kentucky, we have just under 11,000 members, and represents any type of law enforcement you can think of that's sworn. So you've got your police officers, sheriff's deputies, probation parole officers, corrections officers, and it's really an advocacy group. We are a little bit of a different kind of nature a little bit, because we have the fraternal side of things, which the majority of our membership is, and then we have a collective bargaining piece too that our largest lodges participate in. So we work as advocates. We work on behalf of officers who may, for a number of things. They may have family issues. They may have issues with their job. And so the FOP, it wears many hats like I do.
So is it a nonprofit, or?
We have a nonprofit arm, essentially, where we do other stuff, but I wouldn't characterize it as a nonprofit. We're more of I would call us a labor organization if I had to put a title on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, that's awesome.
So it's a lot of fun, and in my position as chaplain, it's elected. So we run for election for statewide office, and then a new policy that we'd put in place was someone on the executive board would be then elected to be the Governmental Affairs Chair. And won that election in Ashland, or actually was appointed in this one. So that's how I ended up there.
I know that you worked as a parole officer, and so is that how you got involved with the FOP, or just during your work in these different fields?
So the FOP has been a part of my career since it began. There's the ability to be a part of the FOP in an associate level, which is not sworn, which I was as a dispatcher. And then when I became sworn, I joined in and really didn't take on a leadership role until about 6 years. I serve as a local president in Louisville of the Metropolitan Lodge, which encompasses all the small cities and federal and state officers. But probably in the last 4 years have really been when I've jumped in and gotten involved and been a big part of what we're doing.
And I know I've been following you on social media a little bit. That I know that the chaplain position is an elected position, but you're campaigning right now for another elected position, if that's right.
Yep, campaigning for vice president. So we that involves going across the state and meeting different places. Our vice president isn't running again. His name is Mike Sweeney. He's a retired Lexington police officer, and Mike's done so much for us, and he served in that role about 12 years, I think. And we had an opening up there. I felt like it was potentially an opportunity for someone younger to have really a top leadership spot and have the opportunity to help shape the future of the FOP. And so it's been a lot of fun campaigning. I think I've mapped it out. I'll drive about 5,000 miles when it's all said and done, which is a lot. But the men and women that make up this organization, I mean, they're just quality people, really.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, we're hoping for the best for you with this campaign. I mean, I'm not part of the FOP, so I don't have a vote in it. But for those of you who are, be sure to vote for Ryan Straw.
I appreciate that.
And I know you've gotten, with your work with the FOP, you've gotten to do a lot of different things. Gone to D.C. to meet with different senators. Gotten to advocate for different bills that have been passed. I've watched a few of your interviews with Kentucky Tonight and stuff like that. So tell me about, if you don't mind chatting me up here, a little bit about your involvement with those affairs.
So when I took over as a legislative chair, it was, of course, in the middle of COVID. So it was completely different than any other year that I'd ever even helped out in Frankfort. And so we did a lot of stuff via Zoom, utilized social media for the first time to really get our message out on Twitter, which helped out. And we had a lot of bills and stuff going on because of several incidents that occurred around the country, and so there was a real magnifying glass on law enforcement. And because of that, we ended up being more in the spotlight here in Kentucky. And some of the bills that were proposed were controversial to some people. And so there was a lot of opportunity to get asked for interviews and do different stuff. And because of Twitter, Renee Shaw from Kentucky Tonight had the ability to reach out and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and that's where we're going. So my daughter walks in the room here. But she said, hey, this is I think it'd be really good for you to come up and be a part of that. So, it's helped because it's given the FOP a platform that really we didn't have before. And to go out to a statewide audience like that and to kind of show that the FOP was open at least to working with groups, I think that's been the best thing that's come out of it, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you gotten to at least have discussions on those shows, which I think has been awesome. I've gotten to watch, and I feel like, especially now with how things have been over the last year, there's still a lot of hostility in a lot of different areas, and you watch the news and you watch these different debate shows, and it's people just chewing each other out. And it's kind of refreshing, at least the ones I've watched. Maybe there's some dives into some of these Kentucky Nights I need to find where it was very kosher talks, it felt like, between everybody, which is, I think, good just to get conversations going. Yeah,
and I think that history on both sides, but, I can only speak to the FOP history. We're a passionate group of people. We've tended to have issues where we become so passionate that we come across as not willing to be open and to talk about issues that may be there. And I agree. I feel like the conversations we've been having have been just absolutely fantastic. We've talked to groups that we haven't normally talked to, and we just want to educate people. And we want to be educated too. We want to listen. We want to evolve, because if the community can't trust us, then we can't do our jobs effectively.
Right. Well, and that was one of the reasons what was appealing, Ryan, for me to have you on this show, to have you in this role, because of everything that's gone on. And as you've kind of mentioned, Kentucky has been a magnifying glass over the last year because of the stuff with Breonna Taylor and a few other cases that's happened. A lot of people looked around Kentucky because of all the different things that have gone on with the protest and different discussions about police force. But if you don't mind, I know, I know you are wearing a particular jersey.
Yeah.
But, I would like just some of your candid thoughts on everything, what you've thought of everything that's been going on here. And really, I guess, the deterioration of the trust between citizens and police right now, and kind of what you've kind of observed from the outside looking in.
I think there's always been discussions on both sides of things that we could improve on, things that we would ask community groups to help us with or improve on. But when Breonna Taylor was killed, I don't think that there was anybody in law enforcement that was obviously happy about that situation. It was a tragedy for multiple reasons. But her death really shined a light on some things that have been probably boiling over for some time. And there's an issue when you have a major thing that, like the death of someone in a police shooting or a police raid, as it's been called. we tend to then look at everything that we feel is wrong with law enforcement, and we just put it on that incident. And now we've rehashed a number of different things, and we saw that with George Floyd in Minneapolis. We've seen that in other police shootings too. And, this one in Louisville was especially difficult from a law enforcement perspective to discuss because there was so much misinformation that had come out. But also, we had a police officer that was shot on that call.
Yeah.
Shot in the leg. Had they not had an officer there, he could have bled out a hidden artery. He could have died. And so the whole situation was bad. And, I got to be honest with you, it's really one of those deals where I worry what may end up happening if we weren't willing to sit down and talk. And I'm not one to put – I've heard – let me say it like this. I've heard that people – have used Miss Taylor's death in a way to say, well, she really is going to be the one to bring about change. And I don't think anybody should have to die for us to come together to have a conversation. And so I just think the situation's tragic. I think that there needs to be some accountability from our elected officials who were handling that in Louisville. I think the FOP, especially the local FOP there, has been more than willing to discuss things. But that's what makes it difficult. If we could have honest conversations and honest things going out to the community, there's still going to be people that are hurt by it, but we're going to be able to heal quicker and have the opportunity to work together on more stuff, where right now, everybody's on the same side because no one thinks that the other side's hearing them.
Yeah.
And so it's awful, man. When you see these things on TV, you cringe because whatever the reason is or whatever it is that's going on, we're going to end up having to talk about it. We're going to end up rehashing things. And eventually we've got to come together and heal from and figure out how we get past some of this and work together. And if there's some sort of reform, the FOP's never been against discussing that. And so I like that aspect. I like the message that the state FOP's putting out right now, that we are willing to listen and that we understand there are some things that we can polish up that may help us better interact with the community.
Now, I know we've talked about Kentucky tonight and your kind of discussions you had on there. Have you had a chance to speak with citizens one-on-one in the communities and kind of get their thoughts on and have those conversations with them too?
So the great part about being chaplain is you meet a whole range of people. And I was in Louisville during the protests and the riots and everything that was happening, and walking around and talking to folks, not just police officers, but just regular people out there exercising their First Amendment rights. And we haven't hosted a town hall type situation or haven't had the opportunity to really do that, but I've had great conversations with Representative Attica Scott, Katora Heron, who was on the show with me. I've reached out to Ja'Cory Arthur. For some reason, he hears this. He's a councilman with Metro Government there. He was on the first Kentucky Tonight. And we just really want to be able to talk and have that opportunity to have those conversations with the community. I think that's going to come to pass. We're going to have to have those conversations.
You said you haven't done any I guess a town hall type of thing, as you put it. Is that a hope you have, is to kind of have one of those open sessions, I guess to say, an open floor, I guess to say, with the community?
I think so, and I think we need them in different areas, different communities, because we've had these town halls, not hosted by the FOP, but hosted by other groups, and we've had people as panelists on them. But I think the FOP, something we should look at is maybe having one of these different parts of the state that really would help us get the message out, that we're willing to listen. And I think we're going to hear some stuff that we don't want to hear. That's hard for us to hear.
Yeah.
But we need to be open at least to having those discussions.
Yeah. So then I want to ask about this, because you've talked about how you're listening to the other side, trying to understand them, trying to relate to them, like a true pastor. Right. But from your experience watching police officer in these different police forces and stuff, But yeah, I'd like to just know, Ryan, like, what have you kind of noticed from these different police forces and these different police districts, how they're handling these responses and how they're reacting to everything going on?
I think that most of the police departments, if not, well, I will say all of them, are out there trying to do the best for their community. I really feel like they have come out and said, "Hey, we want to work together. We want to help out. We want to do what's best for the community." I think when you get down to the folks on the line, the ones that are working the day-to-day stuff, clearly it's stressful, and clearly it's hard. It's hard for families to watch their loved one go out and serve the community, knowing that because they wear a badge, they're hated or they're not appreciated. I said on one of the interviews for somebody, I don't think it was on Kentucky Tonight, but I said, I think most police officers feel respected, and I still stand by that. But I also think that it would be I would be lying if I said that they still weren't nervous and that they didn't have they didn't feel comfortable in their community, that people really supported them. And I think that's human nature. It's just like anybody in the military that's served or anybody that has served in law enforcement. You don't want to show that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to not heal themselves. And so we work on that too in the FOP, mental health and wellness. And so in your question, that's what I go back to is we need those officers to be better, because the departments are trying. The departments are trying. The officers are trying to do their best, and they're going to do their job regardless. That's what you sign up for. It's never was supposed to be easy. It's just we would like a little more credit for the good ones, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of those things, like, and the experience is very different for me from a lot of other people.
Yeah.
With how I've grown up, but like kind of a relatability when it comes to like maybe some animosity towards police officers. Like, yeah. I feel like everyone there at some point, everyone's maybe had a bad cop story, like being pulled over and you had to deal with an arrogant cop or someone that was kind of pushing down on you. And so when stuff like this happens, even at a lesser level like me, all I've had to ever do is get yelled at by a cop before for being pulled over.
Yeah.
That kind of resonates with me a little bit more. So,
right.
Yeah, no, that's just what I kind of think is like, sometimes I understand, but also the other side of it is you can't imagine what they're going through at the same time right now.
Yeah. And, I think to those stories too, you're absolutely right. We hear them all the time, where people have had these interactions that have shaped the way they view law enforcement completely. And, if you look at the way that we've previously handled those things, we typically just say, that's what you do. You comply, you listen, and we still stand by that to an extent. But in this generation, in this time in the world, we need to be able to listen and say, hey, tell us about why this was a bad interaction. Give us the idea that you give us the thoughts you were having at that time. Tell us what you think should have happened, and let's educate one another, and let's work together so you don't feel scared when a law enforcement officer has an interaction with you, because the whole job is to help. And if you're scared of us, you're not going to ask us for help. And there's so many stories, and the stories are they make you shake your head. If you take your law enforcement cap off for a minute, they make you shake your head. But I think that we do a good job of training people. We're learning, different techniques that maybe didn't work, and some that are better than others. And you always want a positive interaction, but you just never know. And law enforcement are trained to anticipate an issue before it happens. So,
all right. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch myself here. For those who don't know, I just came from work, so I'm like half awake, chugging tea, trying to get going.
And you got a 4-year-old running around up here too, so it's all good.
But I mean that it was one of those things. Like, I even thought to myself, like, bringing you on, what kind of response would that get from my listening audience? And it's pretty diversified, but would people find it more polarizing? But because I know you, and I know your heart, and I know I've gotten to meet you a little bit and get to know you a little bit better. I knew that this would be good conversations, good discussions here. And I know we've kind of talked about that as one way to kind of start that healing process. Do you have any other ideas how we can begin that healing process between police and citizens?
I think stuff like this is huge for us. Getting the message out from the FOP that for lack of a better way to say it, we're not the boogeyman. We are an organization that represents law enforcement. We believe in the good that's being done out there, and we want to be able to share that good. But I think that the whole way that we think about how to approach what's been going on, that is going to help us build back these bridges and things that have divided us, just based on having that thought process. I think talking to groups that we just don't normally talk to have helped and will continue to be beneficial. But I think it's just we're going to have a dialogue. And everybody I talk to, if you watch anything I've done or any story, I repeat myself, but it's true. It's an education issue. I really believe that. I believe it's an education issue for us as the FOP. It's an education issue for other groups because we all live in these communities. We all have families. We don't want a divide, whether it's racial, societal, whatever. We don't want a divide. We want to be able to serve the people in our communities. We want to do it well, but we want our communities to come together and support us and respect us enough to do it. And I'm willing to say the FOP will do whatever it takes to get that done.
So we are in 2021 now, kind of near the tail end of COVID. Where is the FOP kind of going from here to help out with this process, would you say, at the moment?
So the FOP has done kind of a media tour, if you will, put themselves out there, opened themselves up to discussions. We're really trying to find what is the best move forward. This is something that we really never had to deal with before. We've obviously, had local discussions, within police departments and communities, but we've never had a need, I guess, that we've been aware of to go out and have these conversations with community leaders. And that's something that we're going to continue to do. Like I said, I really believe in a town hall type setting, an opportunity to get together, let people talk. You're going to have those difficult conversations, but they're necessary.
Right.
And I think that's how we move forward from this. And we've done in the legislative side too. I mean, I tell a story about Attica Scott. We just differ on so many different things. And she's a representative out of West Louisville. The zip codes she serves are the poorest zip codes in the state. They're also they have the highest crime rate in those areas. There's a number of issues why that is.
Yeah. But
one of the things that has always been kind of fascinating to me is we just never have agreed, so we just don't talk. Well, we had an opportunity to talk this past session, and I think it did wonders for people. I think that even though we never came to an agreement on what we were doing or never really found traction on some of the issues that we had initially discussed, the door is open now for us to talk. And we got to have those conversations with people we perceive that don't like us or, members of our group that don't like them. And, it's okay to have a difference of opinion, but that's what's going to further us is continuing these conversations with those people.
And most of the officers you talk to, are they open and willing to have those same type of conversations too? I
think so. I think you have to get past the hurt that comes from the rhetoric.
Yeah.
And, you can say rhetoric on both sides, but the rhetoric that comes down on the officers on the streets that then make their job harder on the day-to-day side. But, yeah, I don't know that there's anybody in law enforcement that wouldn't be willing to talk to somebody that wants to make things better. We are going to disagree, and I think that for whatever reason people have said, well, that's why we don't talk because we don't want to disagree. Well, we're going to disagree, but, goodness gracious, if we don't have these conversations, how are we ever going to get anything done?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird question, too, to string in here.
Yeah.
I mean, with everything going on with the law enforcement over the last year, with all the different protests and different pushes, on top of that, you've had to add a pandemic on top of it. And, we've all lived through it. We
Yep.
all know what it's like. But what type of stress do you think even the pandemic put on all that?
Oh, I think it exacerbated everything that was going on for sure.
Yeah.
Law enforcement having to add in that part that also makes their job harder. They've got to be masked, but then they have to be out in the community, so they're going to come in contact, even more than you or I that may be walking down the street or in our home or in a store. They're dealing with folks that all over the city, and when the pandemic was at its height, we had a real problem with the fact that these officers were having to work these super long shifts, and they were away from their families, and what were they bringing home to their families? You heard the stories from some of the larger cities where if you were a doctor or a nurse, you were living outside in your garage because of the pandemic. And that stress alone, it's already hard. I mean, if you can imagine, you love a police officer, that's your spouse, whether husband or wife. And when you let them know, you give them a hug at the end of the day, give them a kiss or at the beginning of the day when they're getting ready to leave, there's a chance they don't come home. And people always say, well, that could be anybody, right? But they know. They know that there's a chance every single day because of the job that they've chosen to do or feel led to do could hurt them. So then imagine adding on top of a pandemic that not only could hurt them, but they could bring something home to hurt their family without ever knowing. That stress on the law enforcement officer, him or herself, has to be astronomical. And we need our police or corrections or anybody that's out there, we need them to be in the right state of mind to go out and serve the community. And I keep hitting on the mental wellness and the stuff the FOP is doing for that, but it's crucial. It is so crucial right now.
And I'm hoping now that we've, knock on wood, God willing, have come towards the tail end here and things start opening up, maybe some of that exhaustion from the last year will settle.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about how you've seen different police departments work through the pandemic and then all the pushback that's been going on here. And for those who don't follow Ryan on social media, one of the things that I do love too is he likes to promote and talk about other officers in the community. And, I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but who, just off the top of your head, maybe a couple officers, do you know who have been some of the unsung heroes of this last year that you would say are making a difference right now?
I want to give out individual names, but I have to say I'm going to give out individual departments. Every police department's been doing it, but LMPD in Louisville specifically, these guys and gals had just a task that would be just – it was unmatched. They had to figure out how to do it, and they came to work every day. 16-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, whatever it took. Rotating in and out, no off days, and you can see pictures online. You can see, stories, news articles. So many officers with so many special stories, opportunities to help out, to break the line that had been drawn there between the group that was upset with the police and the police itself, and to go across those lines to really focus on the children that were involved, the kids, making sure that we're showing them that we can give them a better world together.
Yeah.
So there's so many people I would do it an injustice to leave somebody out, because there are so many stories of the tremendous work that's been done during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even for you to mention how the LMPD, because we've talked about that magnifying glass, and the LMPD, for obvious reasons, has been the focal point of world news coverage. And
right.
And so it's awesome to kind of see how they're responding and they're working for it. And just to try to see how we can all just kind of come together and get some healing after a long and painful hell of a year, man. So
it's been tough. And not to leave out Lexington or Northern Kentucky or anybody, these larger urban areas really all had to deal with the same type of thing Louisville deal with, maybe on a little bit of a smaller scale. But, I'm just, as a representative of law enforcement, I'm proud to be able to come out and be, I get lucky enough to be a face. I get to do this fun stuff, and talk about things. But it's really an honor to share the stories, because you don't see that. You don't see that stuff on the news. It's not something that's either fun to report or is just left out for whatever reason. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so you can put whatever you want on it. But, talking to these folks and watching and listening to their stories, I can't say law enforcement could have done a better job than what they've done during the pandemic.
So when we've touched, obviously, and danced around it here, I don't know if the answer may differ or not, but what do you see as the future of law enforcement as far as where we're going to come after all of this?
I think it looks different, for sure. I think to put a pin in it and put it on the wall and say this is what we're going to look at the next few years, I think you're going to have a lot more conversations, and I really believe you're going to have a lot more collaboration between groups that didn't meet before. And I think that policing is going to maybe go back to some of the experiments that they did in the 90s and the early 2000s, where community-oriented policing, even though that's still implemented in a way in a lot of places, I think you're going to have that. You're going to see that more. You're going to see more training and more understanding on different ways to interact with certain groups of people that maybe law enforcement didn't usually have to deal with at some point. I think all of that. I think we have to address if there's a bias, if people have bias, how they handle that. But I think you're going to see a more educated and a bigger drive to get good people into law enforcement. But on the flip side of that, I also think that, unless we have some buy-in from cities and other governments, city, county government, state government, if we don't have some buy-in to help out with benefits, pay, all these different things, we're not going to get the best of the best. And we lose that in this state. We lose them to border states a lot. We don't pay well. But you have a lot of people that have a heart to do the job, and they're great. They're either good cops or they would be good cops. And we, for whatever reason, haven't figured out how to get the pay and the benefits up. But, the FOP, that's what we work on every single day, is how can we do it. And we do have friends in Frankfort that listen to us, that pick up the phone when we call. And we know a lot of people up there have a heart to fix this problem. And that's what the future of law enforcement is going to hinge on, is do we figure out a way to attract the best of the best.
Awesome. And, we highlighted this at the start of the show here, that you're currently running for a vice president position with the FOP. Yeah. And putting you on the spot once again, sir, if you don't mind.
No problem.
But, what if you did get this position, put your campaign hat on here in a minute, what would you do to improve on the FOP from this point if you were in that vice president position?
Well, I think I would push to modernize the way that we do business. In the limited opportunities I've had to travel the country to meet stuff, I've gone a few places and talked to other state presidents and state groups. The state lodges are really beacons for their local lodges, and we are that to an extent. But what we do really great has been happening for years. And so I think to add on to that, it's time to evolve and to look at different ways. And one of those things is making the FOP still the fiercest advocate for law enforcement, but also a group that other folks feel comfortable calling and saying, hey, we want to know about law enforcement, or hey, we want to talk to somebody about this. We want you to come and talk to us. And I feel like that's what I'll bring to the table.
Awesome. Well, hey, that sounds good to me, man. Yeah. I'd vote for if I could. So whatever a Dan Pauly endorsement gets you, I don't know. It gets you a McDonald's cheeseburger or something.
I'll sell it everywhere. You'll see it on social media.
Well, Ryan, I've had so much fun talking to you, man. And thank you so much for coming on and having some really deep, genuine conversations and just kind of pulling back the curtain a lot, man. And at this time, just these last couple minutes, I want to give the floor to you. Where can my listeners find you at? Where can they learn more about the FOP or even get involved in the FOP if they want to? And Just tell us what to do, man.
Yeah,
just
hey,
tell
all right, man. Yeah, tell you what to do. I'm really good at that. No, we utilize social media like any other group does. You can find us mostly. I think our Facebook is pretty relevant for everybody else. So Facebook, Kentucky State FOP, really easy to find. On Twitter, if you want to interact with me personally, at Straw FOP, which is my public Twitter account that. We share stories of law enforcement. You'll see some comments during the legislative session from me. But we welcome that involvement. And if you're a sworn law enforcement officer, listen to this, you're not involved in the FOP, I encourage you to contact your local lodge, contact the state FOP to find that local lodge, and get involved. But really, on behalf of the state FOP and our president, our executive board, we're just honored to have these opportunities to come out and talk. And we want to have these conversations, and we want to continue to do them. So we're just thankful for that, and make sure to reach out on Facebook or Twitter especially for me. I love to interact with people. I love to talk to folks, and I'm happy to answer any questions you send my way.
And on an unrelated note, you can always come over to the Versailles Presbyterian and meet him too. And you can also watch my wife play flute. That's
right, and that's a good plug. VPC here in Whitford County. It's a great church, open, welcoming, inclusive. We meet on Sundays, have an 8:30 to 10:30 service, and we've got a lot going on. It's a great church, and he's absolutely right. You can come here, his wife play flute, which is wonderful, or you can watch us online too. So
you'll realize all the talent in my family comes from her. So
all my talent comes from my 4-year-old and my 3-month-old. So I don't know what to say what that says about me. So.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much again, man. I'm hoping for the best, and hopefully we're looking towards a happier and healthier future, God willing, man. And good luck to you on your campaign as well, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
All right. And we'll hopefully talk to you again soon.
Absolutely.